Master! Look at him now!
The sky turns a bruised purple as a heavy silence falls over Jerusalem. Imagine a man carrying a heavy wooden cross, his back torn and his breath shallow, yet his eyes are filled with a strange, haunting peace. This isn't just a story from an old book, it is the most selfless act in human history. Why would someone choose to suffer like this for people who turned their backs? Today, we are stepping back 2,000 years to witness the heartbeat of the Passion. Don't blink, because every drop of blood tells a story of love that changed the entire world forever. The morning air in Jerusalem felt thick, like a storm was waiting to break. In the center of a shouting crowd, Jesus stood still. His robe was stained red, and a crown of sharp thorns was pressed into his head. Each breath he took was a struggle, yet he didn't fight back. The Roman soldiers pushed him forward, placing a massive, splintered wooden beam across his raw shoulders. The wood groaned under its own weight, but the weight of the silence from his friends felt even heavier. As he took his first step toward the hill of Calvary, the ground seemed to tremble. Every step was a battle against gravity and pain. People watched from the shadows, some crying, some mocking, but Jesus kept his eyes fixed on the path ahead. He wasn't just walking toward a destination, he was walking toward a destiny. The sun began to hide behind dark, swirling clouds, turning the day into an eerie twilight. Something much bigger than a trial was happening here. The clock was ticking toward a moment that would tear history in two, and the real sacrifice was only just beginning. The path up the hill of Calvary was steep, covered in jagged rocks and thick, choking dust. Every breath Jesus took felt like fire in his lungs. The heavy wooden beam scraped against his shoulders, reopening wounds with every staggering step. Suddenly, his knees buckled. He crashed to the ground, the wood pinning him down like a giant's hand. The Roman guards growled, pulling a confused man named Simon from the crowd to help carry the burden. As Jesus looked up, his face was masked in blood and sweat, yet his eyes stayed clear and focused. The air grew strangely cold as they reached the summit. The soldiers began their grim work, the rhythmic sound of hammers echoing against the silent hills. It was a sound that made the crowd gasp and pull their cloaks tight. Darkness began to swallow the sun, even though it was only midday. Time seemed to stretch and warp, as if the earth itself was holding its breath in fear. As the cross was finally lifted toward the stormy sky, a sudden bolt of lightning flashed. The ultimate sacrifice was hanging between heaven and earth, and the world would never be the same. The sky was now as black as midnight, even though the clocks said it was only 3 in the afternoon. A strange, heavy gloom settled over the hill of Calvary, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. On the center cross, Jesus gasped for air, his chest heaving under the weight of a world's worth of secrets. Suddenly, he cried out with a voice that sounded like thunder and a whisper all at once. "It is finished," he shouted, and with one final, peaceful breath, his head bowed. At that exact moment, the earth beneath the city began to roar and shake violently. Boulders split apart, and deep inside the grand temple, the massive thick curtain tore right down the middle from top to bottom, as if invisible hands were ripping it open. The Roman soldier standing guard looked up in pure terror, his armor rattling as he realized the truth. This wasn't just another execution, it was a cosmic shift. As the shaking stopped and a deep silence returned to the hill, the world was left in a stunned, breathless state. The sacrifice was complete, but the mystery was only beginning. The hill of Calvary was finally quiet, leaving only the scent of rain and damp earth. A small group of friends carefully lowered Jesus' body, wrapping him in clean linen and placing him inside a tomb carved into solid rock. A massive circular stone was rolled across the entrance with a heavy thud, sealing the silence inside. Roman guards stood outside, their spears gleaming in the moonlight, making sure nobody could interfere. For 2 long days it seemed like hope had died with the man behind the stone. The world waited in a breathless, painful pause. Then, as the first light of Sunday morning touched the horizon, the ground began to vibrate. It wasn't a violent shake like before, but a hum of pure power. Suddenly, a flash of light brighter than the sun exploded from the tomb. The heavy stone, which weighed tons, was tossed aside like a pebble. The guards fell to the ground, frozen in fear, as they looked into an empty room. The linen cloths were folded neatly, but the body was gone. Death had been defeated in the dark, and a new story was just beginning. The king was alive. The golden morning light flooded the empty garden, making the dew on the grass sparkle like diamonds. Mary stood by the open tomb, her heart racing as she stared at the empty stone bench. Through her tears, she saw a figure standing near the trees. At first, she thought he was just the gardener, but then he spoke her name in a voice that sounded like home. "Mary," he said softly. In that one word, all the grief of Good Friday melted away. It was him. He wasn't a ghost. He was warm, real, and more alive than ever before. News spread through the city like wildfire. The doors where the disciples hid were suddenly thrown open as Jesus appeared among them, showing the scars in his hands that proved his victory. The darkness of the cross had been swallowed up by a light that would never go out. He had walked through death and come out the other side, changing the rules of the universe forever. The Passion was complete, and the world was finally free. 40 days had passed since the tomb was found empty, and the air on the Mount of Olives felt electric. Jesus stood with his followers, his presence glowing with a calm, unstoppable power. They had seen him eat, heard him teach, and touched the scars that proved his victory over the grave. Now he gave them one final mission, to carry this message of hope to every corner of the earth. As he spoke, his feet slowly lifted from the dusty ground. The disciples watched in breathless awe as he rose higher and higher into the bright, clear sky. A swirling cloud of light eventually hid him from their sight, but the silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was full of purpose. Suddenly, 2 men in dazzling white robes appeared beside them. "Why are you looking at the sky?" they asked with a smile. "He will come back in the same way you saw him go." The weight of the cross was gone, replaced by a promise that would shake the foundations of history forever. The Passion of Christ wasn't just an ending, it was the spark that set the whole world on fire. The disciples walked back to Jerusalem, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. They gathered in a small upstairs room, locking the door tight against the world outside. For 10 days, they waited in a thick, heavy silence, wondering if the story was truly over. Then, on the morning of Pentecost, the air in the room suddenly began to roar like a rushing wind. It wasn't a storm from outside, but a power from within. Small flames of light appeared over their heads, and a surge of courage flooded their souls. They weren't afraid anymore. Peter, who had once hidden in the shadows, stepped out into the crowded streets with a voice that shook the city. He spoke of the cross, the empty tomb, and the King who had conquered death. Thousands of people listened, their eyes wide, as they realized the truth. The story of the Passion wasn't just a memory, it was a living flame moving through the hearts of everyone who believed. As the sun set over the ancient stone walls, the mission had truly begun. The sacrifice of one man had become the hope of millions, changing the world forever. The fire that started in that small room quickly jumped from heart to heart, crossing borders and oceans.
Centuries passed, but the story of the cross remained as sharp and powerful as the day it happened. In every corner of the globe, people still find themselves standing at the foot of that hill, wondering at the love that held a king to a wooden beam. The blood that once stained the dust of Jerusalem now washes over the broken pieces of human lives, offering a fresh start to anyone who asks. It is a story that never grows old because it is still being written in the lives of millions today. As the sun sets on our journey through the Passion, the silence is no longer heavy with grief, it is full of peace. The empty tomb stands as a permanent monument that no darkness can ever truly win. You've seen the struggle, felt the sacrifice, and witnessed the victory. Now the torch is in your hands. The greatest story ever told isn't just about what happened back then, it's about what is happening right now in you. The King is alive, the price is paid, and the light is still shining. The world may try to move on, but the mystery of the cross still stands like a giant mountain in the middle of time. From the darkest moment in history came a light that could never be put out. Even now, in the quietest part of the night, people find hope in the sacrifice that changed everything. The heavy chains of the past are broken, and the fear of the future has vanished. It is a story of a king who traded a golden crown for a crown of thorns just so he could call you his own. As the final echoes of the hammers fade away, they are replaced by the sound of new life. The story doesn't end with a closed book. It continues every time a heart chooses to follow the light. The mission is clear, the path is open, and the victory is already won. This is the Passion of Christ, a love so big it covers the whole world, and a power so strong it defeated death forever. The journey is complete, the stone is gone, and the King is waiting for you to walk with him into a bright, new morning. The stars above Jerusalem now shimmer with a different kind of light, as if they are part of a grand celebration that never ends. Every detail of the Passion, from the heavy wood of the cross to the folded linens in the empty tomb, fits together like a perfect divine puzzle. There are no accidents in this story. The darkness was necessary for the dawn to be this bright. The silence was required for the shout of victory to ring across the centuries. It is a story that started in a garden, passed through a hill of pain, and ended in a burst of eternal life that can never be hidden again. The weight of the world was heavy, but the love that carried it was heavier. As the final curtain falls on this journey, the mystery remains as fresh as the morning air. Why would a king do all of this? The answer is written in the scars on his hands and the joy in his eyes. He did it for the lost, the broken, and the brave. The story of Good Friday is finally complete, but your walk with the King is just beginning. The stone is rolled away, the path is clear, and the light is calling you home.